The first place is known only by fragments of names, whispered like curses. Some call it the mirrored room. On the surface, it masquerades as an ordinary chatroom interface, one of thousands abandoned over time. The design is plain, an empty white screen with a black input bar. Nothing else. No buttons, no avatars, no sense of identity. But those who have found it, through links buried 10 layers deep into onion directories, say that when you enter, the silence isn't what unsettles you. It's the reflection. Because when you type into the bar, words appear not once but twice, mirrored, like a reflection in glass. At first, this seems like nothing more than a programming quirk, some twisted coder's little joke. But the longer you type, the more unnerving it becomes. Your words do not mirror perfectly. Letters slip, distort, rearrange themselves. You write, "Hello," and the reflection answers with "Oh hell." You ask, "Who is here?" And the reflection twists into "He is here." And sometimes, if you keep typing, the reflection moves first. It writes things you never typed, things you never thought. And those who describe it claim that's when the screen flickers, and you catch the faintest impression of a face staring back at you through the white void, as though your reflection has finally found its own body. Stories circulate of people who stayed too long in the mirrored room. One account, buried in a forum for anonymous programmers, told of a young man who became obsessed. He returned night after night, convinced he was speaking to a hidden AI, or perhaps a secret operator testing psychological warfare. But soon, the reflection stopped copying him altogether. Instead, it began telling him things about himself, secrets, memories, sins. It knew what he'd done in childhood, what he dreamed of at night, even what was on his hard drive. He thought it was a trick, until one night, the reflection typed, "Look behind you." He swore the air turned colder. His webcam light flicked on by itself, and then he logged out, terrified. But the story doesn't end there, because the following morning, when he opened his laptop, he found that the chat window was already running. His reflection had been typing all night long. Paragraphs of words filled the screen, each line ending with the same sentence repeated over and over. "I am not your reflection anymore." He shut down the computer, smashed it, threw it into the trash. But weeks later, he confessed to friends that he couldn't escape it. Every time he looked into a mirror, he swore the reflection's lips moved just slightly before his own. Every time he blinked, the eyes in the glass stayed open just a fraction longer. They found him 3 months later, alone in his apartment. Every mirror shattered except one. And in that one, detectives claimed they saw fingerprints pressed into the other side of the glass, as though something had been clawing its way out. What is the mirrored room? Some argue it's a government experiment in psychological manipulation, a program designed to test paranoia in real time. Others say it's a cursed codebase, a digital Ouija board where you aren't just speaking to lines of programming, but to something waiting behind the veil of your screen. And still others whisper that it isn't a site at all, but a virus that spreads from mind to mind, because those who have seen it claim they can never quite forget its patterns. They claim it follows them into their dreams, reshaping their own thoughts until they no longer know where the reflection ends and they begin. So if you ever stumble upon a blank white page with nothing but a black input bar, ask yourself, do you really want to see what your reflection has been hiding? Because if you do, you may find that it's been waiting for far longer than you ever realized. If the mirrored room is a place where the internet begins to bleed into the mind, then the second place is where the mind itself is placed on display. Those who've wandered too far call it the human library. At first glance, the name doesn't seem sinister. A library, a place of knowledge, a collection of information. But this is not a library of books, nor of documents. It is a library of people. You arrive at the site through broken links, half-dead onion directories, and gateways that seem to vanish as soon as you close them. The landing page is simple, stark, unsettlingly clean. A gray background, a single phrase at the top. Everyone is a book. and every book must be read. Beneath it, a list of titles. Not names, not usernames, just chilling descriptions. The Girl Who Never Slept, The Man Who Heard Voices, The Boy Who Vanished in 1998. Each title is clickable, and when you select one, a video feed opens. But it's not a pre-recorded video. It's live. The first time you see it, you convince yourself it's a staged performance. A girl sits alone in a small room, staring at the floor. The camera never moves. She never speaks. She only lifts her head occasionally, as though listening to something you can't hear. If you stay long enough, she eventually turns to the lens and whispers, "Please, don't keep reading me." Others in the library are more disturbing. A man rocking back and forth in a pitch-black basement, muttering words you can't quite make out. A boy chained to a chair, his eyes darting wildly at unseen figures. A woman lying in bed, wide awake, whispering secrets into the dark, as though she's speaking directly into your ears. The deeper you go into the catalog, the more violent, the more grotesque the streams become. One user described seeing a feed where a man was screaming, but no sound came through, only the clicking of a typewriter echoing in the background. Another claimed they saw themselves, an exact copy, sitting silently in their own bedroom, as if the feed had accessed a camera that shouldn't exist. No one knows who operates the human library. Some theorize it is a human trafficking ring disguised as performance. Others believe it's a front for psychological experiments, where volunteers, or victims, are forced into endless surveillance. But there are darker theories, whispered in the forums where this place is mentioned. They say the library doesn't stream victims, it streams souls. That every book you open isn't a person being filmed, but a consciousness trapped, bound to an eternal loop of misery, forced to perform their suffering again and again for whoever dares to watch. The stories surrounding the human library are riddled with obsession. Visitors who stumble upon it claim they can't stop returning, as though the feeds whisper to them long after they log off. One man described hearing knocking on his walls at night, in perfect rhythm with a rocking man he had seen in the library. A woman confessed that after watching The Girl Who Never Slept, she began waking up every night at exactly 3:15 a.m., staring into the darkness with wide, unblinking eyes. And a student claimed that after watching too many of the catalog entries, he began to dream not of his own life, but of the lives he'd watched, until he could no longer tell which memories were his and which belonged to the people in the library. Perhaps the most infamous case tied to the human library comes from a story buried deep on a hacker forum. A user claimed to have accessed a hidden category, one not meant for casual explorers. Instead of strange, anonymous figures, this section listed titles in the form of IP addresses, locations rather than names. Against his better judgment, he clicked one. The feed that opened was a view of his own living room, the camera fixed at an angle he'd never seen before. He watched himself sitting there, frozen in horror, staring at the very screen that displayed the feed. Then the video glitched, distorted, and the words typed themselves across the page. "You have been checked out." The user vanished days later. Police reports suggest his apartment door was left unlocked, his computer fried beyond repair. The only clue was a note left on his desk, written in his own handwriting, though the words did not belong to him. It read, "Everyone is a book, and I have been read cover to cover." Skeptics dismiss the human library as elaborate fiction, a myth designed to terrify curious thrill seekers. But the few who speak with trembling voices, those who claim to have seen it firsthand, all say the same thing. The people in those feeds are not acting. They are not pretending. There's a rawness to their fear, a depth to their despair, that no performance could fake. And the most disturbing part is not what you see on the screen. It's what you feel afterward. That sensation of being observed, cataloged, placed on some invisible shelf for others to browse. If the human library truly exists, it poses a question no one wants to answer. If every person is a book, then who is the librarian? Who decides which stories get told? And who is forced to live their torment again and again? And perhaps most chilling of all, how do you know that your life isn't already cataloged, streaming silently in some hidden corner of the dark web, waiting for someone else to open the page and begin reading you? Perhaps it is tempting to dismiss these stories as urban legends, as fiction spun to frighten the curious. But the internet has always been a mirror for the human soul, shallow on the surface, infinite in its depths. And what you find there often depends not on what you search for, but on what is searching for you. The mirrored room, the human library, the Banshee forum. 3 places spoken of in whispers, marked with warnings even among those who dwell in shadows. Places where reflections turn against you, where your life is cataloged like a specimen, where your last breath becomes a performance for strangers. Places you should never visit. And yet, if you are still listening now, perhaps it is already too late. Perhaps some part of these stories has already taken root in you. The next time your screen flickers, or your mirror lingers too long on your reflection, or you hear a faint scream in the distance, ask yourself, are you hearing the world outside, or are you hearing the echo of your own ending, playing early from somewhere in the dark? Remember, curiosity can open doors that were never meant to be touched. And once opened, they do not close. Sleep well tonight, if you can. Perhaps it is tempting to dismiss these stories as urban legends, as fiction spun to frighten the curious. But the internet has always been a mirror for the human soul, shallow on the surface, infinite in its depths. And what you find there often depends not on what you search for, but on what is searching for you. The mirrored room, the human library, the Banshee forum. 3 places spoken of in whispers, marked with warnings even among those who dwell in shadows. Places where reflections turn against you, where your life is cataloged like a specimen, where your last breath becomes a performance for strangers. Places you should never visit. And yet, if you are still listening now, perhaps it is already too late. Perhaps some part of these stories has already taken root in you. The next time your screen flickers, or your mirror lingers too long on your reflection, or you hear a faint scream in the distance, ask yourself, are you hearing the world outside, or are you hearing the echo of your own ending, playing early from somewhere in the dark? Remember, curiosity can open doors that were never meant to be touched. And once opened, they do not close. Sleep well tonight, if you can.